Yo, it's Elut. Welcome back to the channel. Gonna do another branded talk deck list video kind of thing. I got some slight new changes I want to talk about, as well as these sick border sleeves, dude. I got them when they got restocked on Sleeve Chief. Thank you, Galzo, for the discount. That was very cool and based. But yeah, there aren't like super big changes to the deck since my last deck profile video, but there's enough I want to talk about in order to make this one, I think. And then there's going to be some stuff I want to talk about at the end, because there's been a lot of talk about Branded Fusion since it just got limited in Master Duel. So yeah, let's get into it. So the obvious stuff: 3 Albaz, play 3. You wanna see him in your hand sometimes. Straight up, you do. Whether it's going second for a fusion play, or honestly, I kind of like having Albaz in hand, because if you do the normal branded fusion play, you can pitch Albaz for your Lubellion. That way, the banished Albaz goes back to the deck, and this one is in the grave. So then, if you can get a Quem on board through like Granguignol or something like that, you already have one there. And then you can send something else, like you can send like your Albion the Shrouded Dragon or something like that. So I really don't mind that at all. And then 2 Eluber. I don't think 2 Eluber is like, you know, a general rule of branded or anything. For some reason, I personally just like 2. I don't like seeing this guy too much. I like seeing him. I like getting him out there with branded opening, but I don't like seeing him too much. I feel like there are already so many ways you can get to branded fusion. You don't always have to get it through Alubur, and it frees up a little bit of space for other things. So I don't know. I feel like 2 is fine, also because of a change I'm about to talk about up next here, which is we still play the 2 Cartesia. She is awesome. My favorite card in the deck by far. And we are on 2 Quem now. I have sort of gone back on that. I said before, I'm like, I'm not really big on the whole 2 Quem thing. I don't really get it. But I actually do kind of get it now. Because Quem a lot of times is a better normal summon than Alubur. Like I said, there are a lot of ways to get to Branded Fusion. And if you need to send Retribution or Branded Fusion off Quem, you can do that to the grave and then recur it that way. And then all you would need is either a Cartesia or a Saronir, send to grave with Foolish Burial or off of Granguignol or whatever, or if it's unlucky and it's in your hand, because Bestial Lubellion lives in my hand. So I always end up having Bestial Saronir also in my hand. Fuse him away, he hits grave, and then I can get either Albion the Shrouded Dragon to the grave, or Quem just send the spell straight to the grave, and I get my Branded Fusion that way. And the cool thing about Quem over Alubur, over having 3 Alubur in the deck, is Quem is a better normal summon because Quem also does stuff on your opponent's turn. Alubur does not. And the more I play this deck, the more I appreciate what Quem does. So I'm really enjoying 2. And sometimes if something happens to the first one, just having the option to special the second one later in the game off of Titaniclad or Granguignol's effect is kind of nice. It's just kind of nice to have. So I'm into that now. I didn't think I was before, but I actually am. I've been liking it a lot. And then we have the one-ofs, the Tragedy. Great card. Adlib, branded in red. Play is just so fun. And it's pretty consistent to set up with Granguignol and things like that. The Shroudion, as I call him. More people should call him Shroudion. That way we can differentiate between Albion Sanctifier and Albion the Shrouded Dragon. But yeah, Shroudion. And then Birdman. I love the Birdman. Birdman's cool, man. I did cut Springen's Kit again. I go back and forth on Kit all the time. And I'll talk about Kit a little bit more at the end of the video. But for now, I have cut Kit. I think it's fine if you play Kit. I think it's also fine if you don't. Along with that, I have cut Branded in High Spirits. I think that is still a good card, but in this build, I'm not really playing it, and I don't miss it all that much currently. So, things to mention there. We play the 2 Bestials. As I said, Bestial Lubellion just lives in my hand. I don't get it. He's just always there. It's kind of annoying, but he's a good card. Branded Lost is a crazy card to just put on the field for free. So, yeah, pretty solid. And then the Dark Magician. We are still currently playing Dragoon. I have noticed sometimes I would go for like a Dragoon play instead of something else, and I would come to regret it. But I don't automatically think that Dragoon is like, you know, dated or something. I think it really is a matchup thing. And if you are in a matchup where Dragoon just kind of isn't the move, this is a side out spot for me. And that's perfectly fine. So I think Dragoon is still worth playing. Sometimes you want an Omni Negate. Sometimes Dragoon just absolutely rolls over like a certain matchup. And sometimes it's just kind of whatever. But you got to make that call as the player. So I think having the option there for me is still fun, and I still like it. And then onto the spells and things. 3 branded fusion, 3 branded opening, 3 fusion deployment. These are all super standard. Fusion deployment is mostly for Cartesia, but occasionally for an Albaz fusion play is nice. Or occasionally Dark Magician for the damage, or if you want to make Dragoon more organically and not through branded fusion, with like a Cartesia or something. Branded opening is great for Quem or for Eluber, whichever one you need in the given moment. And sometimes the banish effect from Grave to prevent destruction is nice. You know, you can't hate. And Branded Fusion is just an amazing card. That's what the whole deck is kind of founded on. Crazy. Then some more stuff. 3 Book of Moon. I'm still on the Book of Moon, and I still love this card. I think if you haven't tried Book of Moon in Branded, you should. You definitely should. Book of Moon is great in Branded because in the format, it's great. It's just a good card. Decks like Kashtira, decks like Pearly, etc., it's good against those decks. But the good part about Book of Moon is it's also a protection for your own cards. And fusions, unlike Synchro decks or Ixies decks or whatever, etc., you don't lose that card on the field when it's face down. You can still use it as fusion material. So it's kind of a no-brainer for me. And then the Foolish Burial. I did cut the gold Sark. I go back and forth on that card as well. I don't think you need it, but I think if you play it, there is definitely some merit to it. And then the Called by the Grave, because Ash Blossom is cringe. So those are pretty easy to explain. And then You Know Me. We are Crossout Gang, and we play 2 Ash and 2 Imperm for Crossout. And, you know, they're just generically powerful hand traps. Sometimes I want to play 3 Imperm just because Imperm is so good. But I like how the deck is right now, so I don't want to change things if they aren't broke, basically. As I've said before, I do like Nadir Servant and all that stuff, but Crossout is just where my heart is. And then on top of that, we are main decking 2 Triple Tech. I think 2 is fine. This is a card I don't want to see too much of either, kind of like Allure, but if I do see it in my hand, I'm like, cool, awesome, great card. It's great just for the draw too. Sometimes it could be great to shuffle back something in your opponent's hand. I don't know that comes up as much with Branded, but if they use like, if someone's running like Effect Veiler or something like that, and you triple tack and check their hand for an Ash, that could be a big play, but, you know, that doesn't happen nearly as much. It's normally for the draw too. Occasionally, taking control of a monster can win you the game too, but you just have to know when that's the right play over drawing too. Because this deck does have some power cards, so you never know. And then the Branded in Red, the Branded Lost, and the Retribution for recursion, and sometimes to set, because this is kind of nice to set sometimes, I can't lie. And then these 2 cards are just crazy. I don't think I have to explain them to the seasoned Branded players. But yeah, so that is the main deck. We're still on 42 cards. And then onto the extra deck with the sick border sleeves. And I actually got the Albaz Ecclesia normal sleeves underneath. So, you know, we're a little more stylish than before. Kind of cool. But the 2 Albion, the 1 Lubellion, and the 2 Mirror Jade. Standard stuff. Shouldn't surprise anybody. You know, that just is what it is. And then the other Albaz fusions, as my camera is shaking like crazy. Sanctifier, Rinbrum, Titaniclad. Titaniclad is situationally very good to summon. on top of just being a big beater and being immune to your opponent's extra deck monsters for the turn it's summoned, is already great. Sometimes that is just what you need. Sometimes you just need a big boy with extra deck protection, and that's cool. But the great part about him, similar to Albion, is that he is a dark dragon, so you can also branded fusion using Albaz and the Bestial Lubellion to make him, and then tribute him later and get lost for the crackback, if that makes sense. Rinbum is great, mostly for the Grave effect. Sometimes I'll summon him too. He's a really fun card, but it is mostly the Grave effect. And then Albion, the Sanctifier Dragon. Sanctifier is so fun. I love this card. And not for the gimmick puppet cringe stuff. He is so fun to set up fusions for yourself, to mess up decks that really love to summon, special summon when they don't control any monsters. I'm looking at you, Kashtira, and Sword Soul Tenyis, and what have you. And that's already great, and it's just so nice too. Like, if you are going second and you side in something like Dark Roller, which is a staple for me, clearing the board and then making him and stealing your opponent's monsters out of the graveyard is very mean and very funny too. So I like all these cards. Oh, and then Titaniclad, of course, has the Grave effect to special or add to hand a Quem or an Albaz. Normally it's going to be Quem, but sometimes the Albaz is actually the right play. Just something to mention. And then we are on the 1 Granguignol, the 1 Queritus, and the Masquerade. I love Masquerade. It is all favoritism that he is still in this deck. I just like the card. But I have been doing some labbing with 2 Granguignol, and I feel like what that means is I do have to cut Masquerade or maybe move him to the side. But I'm not convinced yet one way or the other. I do think 2 Granguignol is very fun. Reason being is you can make the first one and set up your branded in red play with Ad Libitum. And then if this, banishes itself from field on your opponent's turn, summons a Quem, Quem can reborn your Cartesia from the graveyard if you don't choose to add it back on that turn 1 end phase. And then you can make the second Granguignol to send this guy to the grave, which is hilarious. This is the bounce back to hand, so that's fun. You kind of get both that way if you're running 2 Granguignol, and I do kind of like that. But every once in a while, man, maybe more than once in a while, sometimes I just like to make Masquerade. I just like the card. Again, it's all favoritism. I just like the card. And then Queritus is great for a lot of things. You can cheat this out with Granguignol. And not only is it a defensive card in the sense of making all your opponent's monsters go to 0 attack, but if they clear him off the board somehow, then an Albaz is coming out, and that can be very funny as well. So we like that. So those 3 are good, and this guy I already talked about. Send off Granguignol, pretty funny. And then the GOAT, my GOAT, Predaplant, Dragostapelia, dude, he's so good, you should play him. Guardian Chimera for the branded in red pops and draws. Very good, very cool. And the Dragoon. Again, Dragoon, you gotta know when to play him. It's not like your main play, because a lot of times on the turn 1, usually you're not making Dragoon and Mirror Jade. It can happen. It does happen. I've seen it happen before. But usually that's not the case. And usually if you make Dragoon, that means you're not setting up Mirror Jade, and you're probably also not setting up like a really good branded in red play. It's a little bit weird. It's hard to get into specifics without like a test hand example, but you have to know when to play him in the matchup. And I think if you do know when to play him, he's a very good card. So yeah, that is the extra deck. And you know me with the side deck, I'm pretty loose with the side deck because it just changes all the time. So I'm not going to give like a set thing, but I love 3 Dark Roller in the side. You could main deck Dark Roller in most decks. This one is no exception, but at the very least, you should have it in the side. Because some decks just crumble to Dark Roller, and Branded just has a field day after the fact. So that's a good card. And then this is another card I go back and forth on currently, which is Super Poly. This is really a matchup thing as well. Sometimes Super Poly is the greatest card ever made, and sometimes Super Poly actually does nothing. So I don't like main decking it if I don't have to. but it's a situational sort of choice, I guess. Something to consider. And then we have in the side the Albalanatus, mainly for like the Dragon Link stuff. Or if I just decide one card in my extra deck is really not cutting it for the matchup, Albalanatus can be a nice send-off Mirror Jade, situationally, for adding Branded Fusion or Fusion Deployment. And that's all really cool too. He's kind of a cool card, but more situational, I feel like, than some of the other ones. And then I've been playing 3 Nibiru in the side. Nibiru has a double purpose because it's good for decks that just have a lot of steps and don't necessarily put up an Omni Negate like very early. And they just crumble. They all just go away. But more than that, this card can also be sided in if you know your opponent is playing Nibiru, because you can use it as a crossout target. And a lot of people seem to not actually play Nibiru against Branded. You know, everyone knows to play Ash, Imperm, that kind of stuff. But not many people play Nibiru against Branded. And Branded can play around Nibiru, but bad players will not. So, you know, you gotta be aware of it. It's something to consider. And then if you want to run a Floodgate or whatever, then, you know, I would recommend this one. There can be only one. I've talked about this in another video. This card is cringe, but it doesn't hurt Branded very much because you have a lot of monsters on the board, generally speaking, that are all different types. So this is fine, and it just makes your opponent not play the game, but I don't like this card. It's the same as this card. I don't like this card either. I hope this shit gets banned. Which leads me to the last part of the video. First of all, if you were just here for the deck profile, thank you for watching. That's the end of that main part. But I just wanted to talk a little bit at the end here about Branded Fusion, because Branded Fusion was just limited in Master Duel. And there's been some talk about, oh, what if Branded Fusion gets limited or maybe semi-limited in the TCG? What do we do then? And my first gut reaction is, why would they do that? I genuinely, I don't get why they would do that. Branded has never been the best deck. It's counterable by, like, some of the most basic cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I don't know why they would do that. It's a consistency hit to hit Branded Fusion. It doesn't change the ceiling of the deck. If your opponent still gets to their Branded Fusion and resolves it, Branded is still doing Branded stuff. It's all the same. All it hurts is consistency, which I think everyone can agree is just not fun. So that I really don't get why that would be a thing, but it's something to talk about. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. If they do limit Branded Fusion, I'm going to get this fucker off the screen real fast. If they do limit Branded Fusion, then I have a couple things I've been thinking about as far as deck building. So if we only have one in the deck, I do think we're going to have to play Kit again. Like, for sure. Either 1 or 2. I could maybe see a world where we play 2 Springin's Kit, because we're going to have to recur that one Branded Fusion, likely. And that's even more important because sometimes the way you get to your Branded Fusion is not just off of your Eluber. Sometimes you do get it from the grave turn 1 via Retribution Banish. And if that's the case, you really need Kit for the crackback, because that's your only option to recur it otherwise. So Kit will definitely be making a return, I think, if that happens. Again, I don't think it should happen. I don't think they should touch this card. I think they should ban the stupid puppet. But that's just me. There are already enough non-games in Yu-Gi-Oh! Why would we nerf consistency of a deck but leave this in? That's just like double the non-games, in my opinion. Like, that would be really dumb. But along with Kit, I think Branded in White might become more of a must, because a lot of lists aren't actually playing Branded in White. Some people still are. Like, if you watch videos of, like, Nesh play and stuff like that, he tends to still play Branded in White in his Synchro build as well. I've been doing a little testing with that. It's pretty fun. That's really all I can say about it right now. It's pretty fun. I don't know that it's better, but it's fun. So Branded in White might make a real comeback, I think. And then on top of that, if Branded Fusion is to 1, we might just have to do all the stuff we normally do a little more organically, which in my opinion means we'll probably bump Cartesia to 3. And we'll still have 3 fusion deployment and all that because it'll be much more necessary for her to be on the field and doing the things that she does, which isn't bad. It's a little more tedious that way, but you know, you gotta do what you have to do. Along with that, I guess we'll probably start playing like High Spirits again, probably at 1, unless you're doing like a 60 card build. Something to consider as well. And then the main thing that I'm struggling with in my head right now is if Branded Fusion gets limited, it sounds weird for me to say, but I don't know about Crossout. If that's the case, I don't know about Crossout, because then the deck becomes a lot more versatile in terms of its options for making a board, and it isn't just like Branded Fusion Turbo. Because in the Branded Fusion Turbo version, I think Crossout is just the move. I think this card's awesome. Protect your best card, you know what I mean? But I don't know if I want to clog the deck with Crossouts if there's only one Branded Fusion anyway, and it's not necessarily the only way we make a board. If we're building around the idea that we make a board without it, worst case scenario, when it's not nearly as consistent to find. But I don't know. Saying Crossout wouldn't be good there, I think, is an overstatement. I don't think that's true. But I would maybe be more inclined to play Nadir Servant and things like that if Branded Fusion is at 1. Because at that point, we're already going for a lot of different backup plans, so what's adding one more, if that makes any sense? And then if that's the case, if Nadir is just better in a world where Branded Fusion is at 1, then we change the extra deck. We put Lulu Walilith back. Maybe we put like Garura or something back, like I talked about in the other video. Stuff like that. I think it's interesting, but if they hit Branded Fusion, I'm gonna be a little annoyed. Just being honest, I think that would just be kind of dumb. Ban the puppet, and also honestly, don't touch Sanctifier either. I love this card, man. Like, yeah, if you ban Gimmick Puppet, there are other quote-unquote locks that you can do with Sanctifier. That's true. But none of them are nearly as cringe as the Puppet. Like, the Puppet just says your opponent doesn't play. Whereas, like, the other ones that I've seen, like Ra's Disciple and stuff like that, like, yeah, they're annoying removing those kind of cards. Like, removing the Ra's Disciple with, like, a Dark Hole or something like that also just gets rid of the lock. Whereas Gimmick Puppet, if Gimmick Puppet gets Dark Hold, your opponent still can't special summon. Like, this is brain dead. I want this gone so bad. I want it gone so bad. But yeah, I guess that's the end of my rant. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully I will make another one a lot sooner, because it's been a bit of a break since the last video. But thank you for watching. Peace out. Take care.